Okay, so I've been wanting to talk about this for ages. I don't know why I'm holding my pencil like this, but a lot of my music is really nostalgic, and I feel like nostalgia is like getting thrown around so much recently. And I don't know, I just wanted to like dive a bit deeper into like, not me mugging the camera, it was like, it's so dangerous to see yourself, but like, yeah, just wanted to get into a bit of like what it means for me and like what I always thought it meant and what like it's being referred to in like the current like cultural landscape. And I'm filming this in my room. I just got like striped bed sheets. I feel like Beetlejuice. One of my goals has always been like making my house like a postmodern vibe, like in the Beetlejuice house. Speaking of nostalgia, I've also been obsessed with like people. I'll paste some like videos like here and here of like people on reels that have like sort of like 1985 like Miami style houses. Obsessed with them. So that's maybe like a good jump off point for this. But I think like what triggered me to make this video is the release of like Confessions 2. Like I find it really weird that, I don't know, I was having this conversation with one of my friends, Luca, and it's like so weird because like Confessions on a Dance Floor by Madonna is like so disco-y. Like the production is so recognizable. Like it like Hung Up was like such a huge song, and like I find it really weird that like now it's like being repackaged as with like this like vague dance vibe. Like it's not like, I don't know, it's like such, I don't know, like Drag Race challenge kind of, I don't know, it's just like really weird. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that. I think RuPaul has like some of the best music in the world. Like I think drag queen music is phenomenal. I'm just saying like it gives like main stage like songwriter like type vibe, and also like just generic messaging, generic everything. And I'm just like, what is this like obsession of like culture, like capitalizing on like nostalgia, but like it's just like this, not even the aesthetics of it, it's like just like hollow IP, like intellectual property. And why did I leave a bottle of water in the back of this? But anyways, yeah, it's just like hollow IP, and it's like, I don't even, The Devil Wears Prada 2, like I'm probably gonna go see it, but I'm like, these things are getting replicated without sort of like respecting the feeling that went into like the original IP. And it's like such different circumstances, and it just like made me think about so much, because I'm like, I always say that I'm nostalgic, but like I feel, as in everything, I'm always like very abstracted in the way that I think about things. Like I'm actually like really pissed off at myself for being so like abstract in my thinking sometimes. But I've always felt like nostalgia is just like a feeling more than a product, and I feel like everything's getting like made into a product right now. And it's like, I don't know, just like, I was reading let me just get the I'm so scared of like my side profile. I keep like mugging myself to the camera, but anyways, I was gonna say the Cambridge Dictionary definition. It's, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, it is a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a specific period, place, or happy personal association. It is a complex being the key in this, bittersweet emotion that blends pleasure in remembering fond memories with a slight sadness or sense of loss for a time that cannot be recovered. And I feel like nostalgia is like being used now, being like, oh, when things were all good back then, which is fair because like we're in such like fucking dark times politically and spiritually. But like it's being used in this like sort of like hollow repurposing of IP kind of way. And it's just like, I don't know, I'm such a nostalgic person, but like I think of that as like the yearning, the longing, and these like complex emotions where it's like obviously like there is like ecstasy and joy like tied to all these like complex feelings, but also like there's like this bittersweet thing of like something that has never been or never will be again. And like I feel like that sort of like nuance is getting lost in today's like macrocosm of culture. And I don't know, I was having like a really amazing chat with my manager Charlotte yesterday on Tuesday, yeah, 2 days ago. And like I don't know, she was really complimentary and it was really lovely, and like I felt very inspired. But like we were talking about nuance and like complexity and like how do you communicate that in a time and place that is like all so like hyper aware and hyper communicative. And I'm just like, I love being connected to people, but like the way that the cultural landscape wants us to connect is like so void of nuance. And like I don't know, just like first connected with culture, I feel like I'm a broken record, but like I first connected with culture on Tumblr and everything was like really nuanced. And like I think I've always been around like my queer like siblings, and I've like we were all trying to like up each like one another with like references, looks, and like I think because I come from like a smaller place, I've like had this like inherent thing of like, oh my god, I need to like, because I come from like a deficit, I need to like become so good, so knowledgeable. And like even in high school I was like just obsessed with ingesting everything and knowing everything that was like relating to like arts and culture. I was like, oh my god, I need to be like so knowledgeable. And then once that kind of stopped in terms of age, also coincided with like the overload of information and like the fucking like Instagram feed becoming like Shopify'd and everything being so commercial. And like I don't know, I just feel like this nostalgia thing is more like a marketing tactic than like an actual feeling. And like I've been questioning it because like it's so sort of like in at the center of like my artist proposition and my like whatever, like I'm rewriting like, so I'm just like doing loads of like writing and digging into who I am, because I just really, again, there was like another chat with Charlotte. I just stepped on a pair of headphones, but we moved. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I was having this like conversation with Charlotte, and I was like, I really wanna, I don't know, it just takes like so much inner work to like get to a point where you're like being earnest as an artist. And like I feel like I'm doing so much internal work that maybe doesn't really translate externally, but like I feel like I'm really getting to like the core of like what I'm trying to say and like why I want to connect with people. And I don't know, we were doing some rethinking because I played some London shows and they were kind of empty, and I was like, okay, but like I think who I'm connecting with is like people who have sort of like the same lived experience of like coming from like a smaller place and feeling like you don't fit in, like really like cliche things, but that are like so fundamental to the queer experience. And yeah, I think there's like this whole talk of like nostalgia in the sort of like cultural zeitgeist is like so empty. Like I feel like it's like there was like you have visual pointers to it, and maybe I'm like so like I do play into it. Like I love a little bandage dress moment, I love like a little like poop, like nod to like the 80s, god no, like pillbox hat, like hello, like my fans are literally called the New Romantics, and that's an interpolation of like an actual movement in the 80s. So like Mr. Officer, I'm guilty as fuck of all of the above. I think like cultural nods are so fun, and playing with that and like playing with like the language of that, of like references and stuff. Like it's interesting if there's like, not to toot my own horn, but like if there's like a sort of like solid like emotional connection. And I feel like, I don't know, just like the aesthetic of like Tumblr and all of that like has been co-opted in this thing, and then like 2012 aesthetics are being repackaged as like 2016 aesthetics, which is so not the same thing. Like that's like fundamentally different. And also I think the thing that really pisses me the fuck off is that they've been like, I think like cis het girls at the time were like very like black and white Chanel and like the black like carbon water and like all of that, and there was like a very specific like cis straight girl like thing going on Tumblr, but then it was like the main sort of like drive of aesthetics was like freaky weirdos, just like pastel goths and like the Jeffree Stars of the world. Not necessarily think he's a good person, but like that sort of like, I remember listening to Prom Night like with my first girlfriend at the time, and like Love to My Cobain was like our love song, which like like that makes me want to puke, but like that was like, I don't know, it was like such a safe space for like weirdos and freaks. And like now, because like the internet is so like commercialized, I feel like you either like fall into the like category of like attractive and palatable, or like there's not really a play, like there's no dark corners anymore, which like, I don't know, again, like I don't really know if this is like I'm not a scholar, I'm not like an academic person, I'm just like speaking out of like lived experience. And I really like sort of like, again, for the sake of nuance, like getting into the nitty-gritty of like what I'm trying to say, and like have YouTube sort of be like a bit more of like a, I don't know, deep dive into what drives me, what moves me, what I find interesting, and what like is at the core of the music. And that will change. I think I'm like pretty certain in who I am and like what my nuances are and stuff, but like probably the presentation of it will change. I feel like I'm quite secure in myself, and I'm like at a point where I'm like yeah, I just want to do better. And like I think ego is out of the equation. I just want to do my best work and be my best self. That's all I care about in like a music context, and like connecting with people. That's like connecting with you guys, whoever's watching. Anyways, back to the nostalgia aspect of all of it. Also really bait reference, but like again, I always thought of like Mark Fisher, because of like Mark Fisher quotes. I felt like it was like a very cis het type of reference, and then I was like, oh, what? I almost knocked the tripod over. But yeah, I always thought it was like a very cis het kind of reference, and I was like, oh, not interested. Like it feels like, I don't know, communism for like straight boys in Italy when they're like 18 and they go to like centro sociale and whatever. Like I don't know, it was just like, I think because I was like such like a hardcore like queer kid, I was like, I don't do all these like blah blah blah, like I'm over here like doing complex things about like the grotesque and like blah blah. And then I basically got recommended it on YouTube. Love this platform, my renewed love. Well, it never went away, but like honestly my fave platform, like fave platform. Anyways, I got recommended, my hat is going wonky as fuck, I got recommended the Mark Fisher lecture on nostalgia, which I'll link in the description below. But I don't know, he like, I have some like talking points. It really resonated with me because I was like, okay, these people like in marketing terms and like culture like talk about nostalgia, but I'm like, it doesn't really align with what I think of it as. Like it's a lot more internal and murky and like sort of like an undescribable feeling. Not to be like difficult at all costs, but I feel like it's not as much like as simple as like they were happier times, blah 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 blah. I feel like I almost like long, and I think that's like probably like a common experience for like queer people, just like longing for like this life you never had, or like this life you think you'll never have, and like there's sort of like this like yearning and longing that like comes with it, that I think is taken out of the equation when spoken to in terms of like the dog filter thing from Snapchat, or like Coachella. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like that's like so hollow. But anyways, that said, I would love to play Coachella one day, so I'm just putting that in there. But yeah, like I think he starts from like the slow cancellation of the future and like speaks about how from the 20th century and 21st century, like sorry, from the end of the 20th century, there were really no like not as many like new ideas generated, and it's all like sort of like a regurgitation of past decades. Again, guilty. Love it, love the 80s, love 2012, so you know, and I love the 60s, so guilty. But I don't know, I just feel like there's not even like in the 2010s, like they were trying to do the 80s, but like it was, I don't know, American Apparel felt like a new concept. It wasn't just like a copy and paste of like, oh my god, like in 1984 they like wore like these disco pants, so we're just gonna make them the same. Maybe it felt like that to people who lived through the 80s. I didn't. I just like really idolized the decade, so like completely my fault if it felt different. But I think there's like a lack of like, I don't know if it's like out of like the insecurity of the times that we live in, and like the fact that like you can't really like foster any ideas because we're all fucking exhausted. Like it's so exhausting to make things in this climate. Like I obviously have day jobs and like trying to survive in London, which is like near to impossible, but like some days I'm just like so exhausted I can't even think, and I'm like forcing myself to do things like this to sort of like keep being plugged in the mainframe and like not just like consume or like be consumed by things. And yeah, I think like his arguments like stem from like the lack of like invention of new forms and like new ways of being. And I think, again, to tie back with the conversation I was having with my manager, like I think one of the most important things for me is that I want people to know that like alternative ways of being and alternative ways of being compared to your surroundings are possible. And like I think that's what I'm gonna bang on and on and on and on about it in terms of messaging, because like I think I'm such a firm believer in self-invention, and I do believe that you can make yourself into whatever you desire. Obviously there's like conditions that like make it hard, and I'm completely aware of that, and I'm completely aware of the fact that I'm saying this as like a European white person, absolutely aware of that. I just feel like, I don't know, there's like, especially now, like everything's just like regurgitation or like consuming, and like there's no sort of like intentional move forward or like tension towards bettering or thinking deeply. And like I think that's something that I'm like really sort of like forcing myself to do, but also like want to surround myself with people that like want to do that. And it doesn't need to be like a complicated thing, just like being intentional about like being a good person, and like being intentional about like caring for the people around you, like being intentional about like putting good into the world, and like not sort of like falling victim to the void. And tying to this conversation, Mark Fisher also goes into like the concept of hauntology. Put it here. And I think he like borrowed it from like someone else, but anyways, again, not an academic. So what was I gonna say? I'm just terrified of this profile of my face. Yeah, Fisher like talks about like how contemporary culture is haunted, hence the word hauntology is haunted by promises of futures that will really never happen. Like, you know, that thing they see like spoken about like millennial optimism, and like I remember when like Fun and like the what's that song, like tonight we are young, and like I was like, oh my god, my 20s, and like not to be like white feminist tea, but like absolutely love Lena Dunham. Like I was so put off by her, but I think it was like, again, my bias against like anything that was like remotely straight when I was younger. And I watched Girls for the first time like a couple years ago, and I've just read her book, well, listened to it, and I don't know, there was like this like sort of like go and get your life, like life is gonna be amazing, because it was like yeah, this like sort of like millennial optimism, and then I like became an adult and it's like, oh, like there was no jobs, like forget about doing art, like fascism is on the rise. And like, not to sound generic, but like that, especially for like my generation, like millennial, like older Gen Z, it feels like all those kind of like maybe frivolous things that we grew up with in the 2010s and like early 2000s, which is a very like frivolous time, I feel like in culture, and really abundant. Like maybe it's like that's how I perceived it anyways. Like I'm not saying this is like an absolute truth, but it felt really abundant and it felt really like frivolous, and we're like, and then we sort of like became adults and I was like, oh, this is like fucking petrifying. And yeah, I don't know, like I feel like there's also like a queer reading of hauntology, of like I've spoken a lot about it with my friends when I was like 24 and stuff, but when you're in high school, like I mean at least that was like my experience. Like I was really plagued by like depression and like felt so out of place for so many reasons and like out of my body. And like also Italians have this like semi-fascist way of like being like, we need to be healthy and be out at the beach and blah blah. And like all I wanted to do was like be inside and be on the internet, like sort of like hide myself, which is really sad to look back on. But like you kind of miss this whole thing of like, let's go on like a trip with my friends, and then I have my boyfriend with me, and like we're gonna go to the lake and we're gonna do like New Year's Eve together, and like you don't really have any of that. I mean, at least I didn't, and I think that was like a common experience with a lot of like my queer friends, my queer and trans friends. And you sort of have this thing where it's like you're always feel like you're like behind in experiences, and I think that you like compensate for that maybe in your early 20s with like hedonism, and you're like, oh my god, I'm finally like free to experience all of this, and like I'm gonna do a billion pills and like go to 700 clubs and like stay up for like 4 days in a row, and like I'm just gonna like bite life because I was kind of like in the backseat the whole time. But then yeah, it kind of like crashes and burns, and there's really beautiful things to it, but like I feel like yeah, I really associate the feeling of nostalgia with something that's like missing or lacking, not something that's like well packaged and like, oh, remember when things were good, like in Christmas 2007. Like I don't really associate it with that. And then yeah, like obviously there's like the capitalist realism like argument of it all, and like the fact that like tech advances but culture doesn't, and it's like this hollow feeling of like everything being sanitized, but there's not, like everything is a hollow container but there's really nothing to put in it, which goes back to the conversation about like the hollow IPs that get like repurposed, well not repurposed, like repackaged and resold, but like nothing new is necessarily being put in it. Going back to the Madonna like album, I'm such a Madonna fan, so like this is no slander, but like it really made me think, because I was like, oh god, like Confessions is such like a seminal album for me. Like even the like the erotica mix from the confession store, that is probably like my favorite Madonna moment of all time. I really don't know how like copyright works yet, so I'll just put the link in the description, but it fucking slaps. Like it's so amazing, and like it's sort of like this really like hypnotic loops and stuff. Maybe I should give those songs a listen more, but like I don't know, it's just like what, like it's just like I'm so over like generic dance music, like I'm so over that. So into this later record, like absolutely adore that bitch, but yeah, generic dance music I'm just a bit like, okay, like okay, straight man DJ from Ibiza, like what now? But yeah, I don't know, there's like, I'm really questioning my relationship with referencing, and my, obviously like you're like accumulation of your references, but something that I always like speak about with Zach is like this thing that low-key stems from like Rick Owens's like sort of like design process, and like because I studied fashion and like I really idolized him and was like making clothes, but he always said this thing about like not having references around when he's designing, like sort of like embodying the references, and like he's like consumed so much of it and like read so much into it, being around it so much, like you don't really need to like have the picture printed out or like be like going like step by step on like how to learn how to make the songs and stuff. And like Zach speaks about like embodied, well, reminds me of the embodied reference thing all the time, and I'm like really trying to like, because I feel like the alchemy of making something new, it's like the amalgamation of that plus your lived experience. So it's like reference, embodiment, embodied reference, I think it is like embodied reference, lived experience equals something new. And I feel like we're missing the embodiment of it all and the lived experience. So we're just kind of like reference equals something, instead of being like, okay, I'm just gonna like put this thing that I really love through the lens of like all of my combined lived experiences and like taste and influences, not in terms of like artistic influences, but like where I grew up, where like I spent the summer and like the people that I met, blah blah blah, and then it's like, okay, we're getting from like, we're getting A plus B equals C, whereas now we're like A equals A.5, and it's like a bit of a diluted version of that, and it's like, okay, but I have like the OG thing here, why would I go for the diluted one here? So anyways, again, I'm guilty of like replicating feelings, I'm guilty of like all of that. I just feel like I make a conscious effort of filtering everything through the lived experience lens. And wait, that sounded like really self-righteous. I'm just saying like I'm trying to make like a conscious effort of like making sure that the nuances are right, and that is not just like a regurgitation, like a thoughtless regurgitation of the past. So that's my 2 cents on nostalgia, because I feel like I've really questioned it for myself, and like I'm about to release something that's a cover in June, so I was like, okay, how do I relate to that in this kind of context? And then I think the production of it all, I think it also makes sense to like honor things that like are really instrumental in like who you are as an artist, but that's a lot different from like being like, that vibe is cute, I'm gonna like boppity boop bop bop and do that vibe diluted. Like, I don't know, like really I think like all of it lies in the intent and like the effort that you put in and the work that you put in, and like besides the like the actual work, like singing the song and like producing and all of it, but like most of it, like the internal work of like not being pedestrian and like not being like taken into the flow of people that are going, especially now I feel like it's just like a fucking stream, haha, funny use of word that, but yeah, like a really violent stream of culture. Feels like really hard to like swim upstream. I feel like it was like, not to be like completely like, how would it be different, like blah blah blah, because I also think there's like value in like speaking for your times, but like it's really hard to like do something that's like a bit intentional, instead of being like, oh well, I guess like we're all swimming that way, so like the current is so fucking potent that I'm gonna swim that way. And being exhausted contributes to that so much. Anyways, I hope you find solace in what I had to say, and it's really healing and important for me to do these, I think, and it's really making me make sense of my artist project and who I am as a person, what I'm trying to say, where I'm trying to stand, which I think is really important, because if I'm not really sure where I stand, then I can't really communicate it properly. But I love you so much, and if you really enjoyed this, guess subscribe. What'd you say? I'm not a YouTuber, but I also have a Discord for Money Romantics, and This is the link, but I'll put it in the oh my god, I have like, ew, I have like sweat stains. This is like unfiltered vibes. So that's all from me and my Beetlejuice duvet cover. Until next time.